Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to continue in the series on discovery writing, or writing in the dark, or pantsing, or intuitive writing, whatever you want to call it. Last time I talked about sort of how I came to discover in this sort of writing, this style of writing. I'll just keep calling it discovery writing, just to keep it simple. Um, and also a little bit like my history with it and how I came to discover it, and a little bit like why I like it and that sort of thing. And today what I want to do is talk a little bit more about sort of like, from what I can tell, the sort of principles behind this style of writing, if there are any certain kind of principles for this sort of thing. Just kind of give you an idea of like the kind of attitude one has to have in order to do this sort of discovery writing. And of course, the first part is we're going to be writing without an outline. And so what that means is that you are going to go into this process of writing a story, whether it's a short story or a novel or something in between. You're going to go into this process with little to no planning. And how much planning that goes into it, or how little that is, will kind of depend on the project for certain things. Like Dean Wesley Smith often talks about, like he'll just have a title. He thinks that title sounds like an interesting story, and so he'll just sit down and he'll just start writing. He'll have that title, and he'll just sort of run with it. He imagines a character, he puts him in a setting, he gives him a problem, and then he just kind of goes from there and just sees what happens. So he's going into this like really with no planning, except for maybe a, like I said, just a title. Or some people go into it with a character. When I wrote Yarrick the Scholar stories, that's what I was doing. I had this character in mind, this Indiana Jones in a Conan the Barbarian kind of world, and I was discovering this character as I was writing him. That was really about all I had, and I had nothing about the world. And when I wrote the first story, which was Desert Nightshade, was the very first Yarrick Scholar story I ever wrote, I had no idea of a plot or anything else when I was writing it. But I did at least have a character. Sometimes people have a setting. They've created a world that they really like, and now they want to put characters in that world. In some ways, I think that would fit like Tolkien's stories. As far as I can tell, his first sort of love was sort of creating the world of Middle Earth. And then I think he just started sprinkling in characters from there. Now, I don't know if he's really a pantser or he may have had the whole thing plotted out. I'm not really sure. To be honest, I kind of don't think he did, but I'm not a Tolkien scholar, so I can't tell you that. So some people go into it with a character. Some people go in it with a setting. Some people might have a problem. The book that I'm working on right now, Portal to the Unknown, which is the working title, what I liked was the idea of someone, in this case a young man, receiving a message that he shouldn't receive. And this leads him on to some sort of adventure. So in that case, I didn't really have a character, and I didn't really even have a setting. I just kind of knew I liked that problem. And so I wanted to write something around that. So I'm not really plotting in these cases, but I'm not also going into it with absolutely no idea of anything, which is kind of like what Dean Wesley Smith will do. I think with the Memories in the City, that one was, I had a character with a problem in a setting. I had an idea of Jake, the lead character. His problem was he was arrested in the dungeon, and the setting was that little dungeon room. After that, it was all just complete, discovery writing and that sort of thing. So when you're going to write like this, you're going to go into it with no plan, and that leads to the next second part of the principles, if you will, is you have to trust yourself. Dean Wesley Smith says he has like a little sign over his writing station. It says, trust the process. I would almost go into trust yourself. I think that's a little more powerful statement. Trust yourself. Trust your intuition. Trust that you know enough about storytelling after a lifetime of hearing stories and reading stories. And you've probably written a few as well, if you're by the time you watch this video, or at least you've told a few stories that you kind of know enough about storytelling that it's all already in you. I mean, and this kind of goes even into like the psychology of the mental health work. There is a form of therapy. It's called narrative therapy. I don't really use it much with my clients, which is strange because I'm a writer, but I don't use narrative therapy. But the notion of narrative therapy is that the human brain tells stories all the time. And we tell ourselves stories, and we tell ourselves stories about us. We make ourselves the character in our own story. And the way we conceptualize our character, ourselves, and the way we tell the story, or the sort of story that we tell, is how we think about ourselves and the world and other people and our histories and things. And so sometimes, and this is sort of a way of using narrative therapy, is a way to help people deal with depression and anxiety, is to tell a different story. Describe your character in a different way. And to the point of like even externalizing and writing it out and that sort of thing. But the notion is that the human brain is constantly telling stories to itself, telling stories to other people, imagining other people in their own stories. And so we tell stories a lot more than we think. In fact, my guess is that's why human language was first invented, was that way we could tell each other stories to some degree. Now, those stories probably weren't very sophisticated. I still think that the old fishing tale is probably the oldest story ever. Goes something like, I was down at the river and I was trying to catch fish, and there was a big one and he was so big, and I tried to catch him for hours and I finally caught him, and that's what we're eating right now, or something. Hunting stories, these sort of things, because those who have been stories that were important to our ancestors, but also from an evolutionary standpoint, they were important. By telling the story of how you caught a fish, you're teaching someone else how to catch a fish, even though you're nowhere near water. Get what I mean? And so that's why I say trust yourself. You intuitively know how to tell stories, so just get out of your own damn way and let yourself tell the story. And plotting, in the philosophy of discovery writing, plotting and discovery writing, or whatever you want to call it, or plotting gets in the way of discovery writing, because plotting is a form of anxiety. You're trying to control the process. You don't trust the process, you're trying to control the process. I want to force the story to happen in this way to fit this little category of what somebody says how a story should be told. And you are no longer just trusting your own intuition, just letting it go and see what happens. As messy as it is, as maybe flawed as it is at times, as difficult as it is in time, you're not really trusting the process, and so why would the process trust you? Why would your own intuition feed you information if you are not willing to listen, to be honest? And so through plotting, we end up getting trapped to where we don't trust our own intuition. We're trying to force it to happen, and when we're trying to force it to happen, it usually doesn't work out. I used to study martial arts. I never really stuck with it long enough to get really good at it. But a common theme, regardless of the martial arts that I was studying, the common theme was you got to stay relaxed. You got to stay emotionally relaxed. You don't want to be going into fight angry because you're not going to think straight. You want to keep your muscles relaxed. You want to keep your body relaxed. You don't want to tense up until you absolutely have to, like just before the punch hits or you block it or something. If you're very tensed all the time, you're rigid. You lack flexibility. You're actually slower, and you're just going to get tired a lot faster. Staying relaxed helps you just respond faster and more intuitively, and that sort of thing. And in many ways, that's what you do with your intuition. If you want to listen to your intuition, you have to let go of the anxiety. Easier said than done. But I'm a counselor. That's everything a counselor says is easier said than done. But that's what you do, is you have to let yourself relax into the process and just kind of let it go. Don't get too hung up on the outcome, because you have no idea what the outcome is going to be. But what I discovered when I first started using this, when I was writing my Yarick the Scholar, was when I just let go, I actually came up with a lot more interesting things. I surprised myself with the little twists and turns and that sort of thing. Maybe I'm not saying I'm like 100% the most original person out there. I'm sure if you dissect my stories, you can totally come with. But I know that if I sat down and tried to plot out my stories, I would not come up with these ideas completely on my own. And I surprise myself, I get to surprise myself, and I have more fun with it. And that's usually what Dean Wesley Smith talks about a lot, is have fun with it, which I guess is another way of saying just staying relaxed and kind of let the process just sort of happen. His view is if you're having fun, then it's more like that little kid that gets to play and that sort of thing. And I guess there's some truth to that. Although I think it has to come the other way. You have to let yourself relax about the process, about what you're writing, about what it says, what other people might think, or any of this other stuff. And if you can relax into that, then you can have fun. I think the fun comes after the relaxation. He likes to use the example of like a 2-year-old that's just playing, and they don't really care. They're not really worried about the what other people think or something else like that. And I'd argue that I don't care. I'm gonna relax and just have fun with it. That comes before the fun. Because to be honest, this style of writing is not always fun, because you don't know what's going to happen, and at some level we feel like we're supposed to know. I should know. I need to know I need to know the ending of this story in order to write this chapter. How do I know what this character needs to say or do if I don't know what's going to happen 5 chapters down the road? And part of that is that we believe that, well, this is our story and we're in control of it and we're supposed to know exactly what's going on. And we tend to forget. I have another video. It's actually a rather popular video. It's called Happy Accidents, which is worth watching because it relates to this. And this is, at least I associate it with David Lynch, because that's the person who I ever heard that where these happy accidents are things that happen in the creative process that you weren't planning, that maybe weren't even, would be considered desirable at the time that they happened or in another context. But when you just go with it, you find out, oh, this was great. This was a happy accident. This was something that I didn't plan but made it so much better. And if you are trying, and you can't plan happy accidents because they're accidents, and so all you can do is create this sort of emotional space to where happy accidents are okay. They're not a big deal. You don't have to know what's happening right now. The example that I used, I think in the video, which I think is still the best one, is in the I believe it's the pilot episode, or maybe one of the early episodes of Twin Peaks from the 1990s. One of the crew members' face was captured in the mirror. That they were filming. I think it was Laura Palmer's mother. She was laying on the couch and she sat up screaming, and it just so happened that in the mirror you could see like one of the set designers' face, and that became Bob. That they didn't notice that face until they were in the editing room, and by that point it was too late to refilm the scene or anything else. And David Lynch just went with it, and that guy, Silva, I can't remember his first name, but Frank Silva, I think so. I don't remember. He became the face of Bob, and you saw him throughout season 1. He was in Fire Walk with Me. He had died by the time they were filming Twin Peaks: The Return, but they still used his image, that he became almost like this demon that was moving through the world that was causing all the evil. If David Lynch had said, oh God, I screwed that up, I'll have to crop that out or cut it out or go with a different scene, or man, I just totally screwed that up, that would have totally changed Twin Peaks. maybe for the worse, maybe for the better. We don't really know. But that's an example of, like, if you trust yourself, if you trust your intuition, if you trust the process, then you get these sort of results that you never could have expected, that at least are more fun. I don't know if they're better or worse. That's sometimes a judgment call that someone else has to make. So that's why I say, like, when we do discovery process, probably if I had to sum it all up with one sort of word, would be trust. You have to trust yourself. You have to trust your intuition, trust the process, trust the storytelling, and trust that will work out in the end. Because if you try and force it, well, then by default you don't trust it, and it just doesn't work that way. But anyway, let me know what you think of in the comments. Is it strange to think of the writing process as a question of trust or distrust? Do you honestly think that plotting is a form of anxiety control, or is this, a legit way that one needs to write stories? Have you ever experienced these sort of happy accidents in your writing? Have they ever worked out for you or anything else like that? But next time I think we're going to talk a little bit about how to build this intuition a little bit, because all of this is necessary before we even get into the realm of actually putting your fingers on the keyboard. So we'll probably talk a little more about, like, how to build intuition so that way you can kind of get better at this. But anyway, I will talk to you later. Bye.